Hello, everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. My name is Luke. I'm a producer here at How To Academy, and welcome to what I'm sure is going to be a really fascinating event. Today, we are completely lucky to be joined by Dr. Joseph Jebelli, a neuroscientist and writer. Joseph received a PhD in neuroscience from UCL, University College London, for his work on the cell biology of neurodegenerative diseases, and then worked as a postdoctoral research fellow at the University of Washington, Seattle. Joseph's much acclaimed first book, In Pursuit of Memory, was shortlisted for the Royal Society Science Book Prize and longlisted for the Wellcome Book Prize. And his new book, this one here, How the Mind Changed, A Human History of Our Evolving Brain, is out now. And it's very good. And that is all why you are here today, to go on a 7 million year journey through our own heads with insights from neuroscience, evolutionary biology, psychology, and philosophy to better understand how our brain's evolution turned us into Homo sapiens and beyond. And if that isn't enough already, Joe will take questions from you, the audience, so please type any you have in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and I promise I will try to get to them at the end. Well, it's more than enough from me, so without further ado, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome Joseph Jebelli. Joe, over to you.
Oh, thank you very much, Luke. Hello, hi, yeah, so my name's Joe, and I'm author of How the Mind Changed, A Human History of Our Evolving Brain. And in this book, as Luke so kindly outlined, I essentially take the reader on a 7 million year journey through our own heads, touching on everything from emotions, memory, and intelligence to consciousness and the evolutionary reasons for autism. And so, as with any natural history, there's a lot going on, obviously, with a 7 million year natural history especially. And so to avoid, essentially trying to download 7 million year history of brain evolution from my head, I thought for this talk, what I would do is essentially go through what I view as the 5 biggest insights that neuroscience and our understanding of the neuroscience of brain evolution have revealed to us over the last few decades of research. And so essentially, the way I see it is there are 5 big insights to be gleaned from understanding how the human brain evolved. And the first big insight, the first thing that we really learned from delving into this topic, is that human beings have evolved enormous brains, and I mean enormous. So the earliest known human ancestor, an ancestor that we call Sahelanthropus chidensis. See if I still sometimes struggle to pronounce that, but Sahelanthropus chidensis, otherwise known as Tumai, had essentially a tiny brain, about 350 cubic centimeters, which is about the size of a child's fist. But our brains, modern human brains, are 4 times bigger than that, with spectacular abilities and potential that we are only just beginning to understand. So essentially, across nearly 7 million years of human evolution, our brains increased massively in size. Humans with brains of 900 centimeters cubed started to appear, followed by humans with a capacity of 1,000 centimeters cubed. And then about 500,000 years ago, brain size ballooned in modern humans to a staggering 1,500 cubic centimeters, which is the size of a cantaloupe. And as I say in the book, if the human brain ever had a Big Bang moment, this was it. So 500,000 years, indeed 7 million years, isn't actually that long in evolutionary terms. And so it's even more astonishing that in what was essentially an evolutionary heartbeat, the brain went from consuming 8% of the body's energy to a massive 20%, despite being a mere 2% of total body weight. And although elephants and whales have bigger brains than humans, our brain is actually 3 times larger than what would be expected for an ape of our size. So obviously with this kind of fascinating, really surprising discovery about humans and how gigantic our brains are, the fundamental question is why? Why do humans have such huge brains? Well, there are many theories about that, and they include a rare gene mutation that shrunk the jaw and expanded the skull of humans. the invention of cooking, a unique human skill that saves energy. And another big theory is that there was the activation of a whole host of genetic switches, which nearly doubled the number of neurons in the human brain compared with that of other great apes. But the truth is, we don't really know the answer to that. We know that there are these interesting theories, and as with many things in neuroscience and other sciences, it's likely to be a lot more complicated. It's likely to involve pieces of each individual theory that come together to form the bigger picture. But it really is a fascinating journey of exploration. And as I say in the book, in the human brain's colossal size and its exclusive identity and marvelous eccentricity, the human brain became our crowning achievements as a species. And so the next sort of big discovery that I came across, and many other neuroscientists are working on right now, is that our emotions, human emotions, are also social constructs as well as biological constructs. And so what do I mean by that? Well, throughout the course of human evolution, our brain evolved the neurobiological hardware to experience primal emotions such as anger, surprise, disgust, joy, and sadness. Now, exactly how it did that remains unclear, but it's thought that the brain evolved at least two regions to do it. The first is the amygdala, which is an almond-shaped structure buried deep inside the brain, and the neocortex, which is the sort of folded outer layer of the brain. The amygdala is especially important. So as the cognitive scientist Adam Anderson famously put it, if all the world's a stage, then the amygdala may be the emotional spotlight. But what's missing from this biological narrative of emotion is our own influence on emotions. So we are not merely the subjects of inexorable biological forces, but we also have the power to shape and control our own emotions. So take fear, for instance. We've got more than 30 words in English for fear: panic, terror, worry, anxiety, trepidation, and so on. And we all know that the fear of falling off a cliff is different from the fear of a job interview. One is a natural trigger, the other is a socially constructed trigger. Now, both rely on evolved neural circuits in the brain, but the constructed trigger is ultimately the product of our environment, because we've been conditioned by our society to think that job interviews are scary. And alas, I think that's a fear that will take a very long time to overcome. But another example is to consider the fact that people only really started smiling in the Middle Ages due to improvements in dentistry. Now, that's not to say that the ancients and our ancestors didn't curl their mouths up into something resembling a smile, but it didn't mean very much in the social context. The smile that we perform today is a constructed emotion. And so the truth is that we construct emotions all the time. We're not born with them. They're not hardwired into our brain. When we think about that upcoming exam, or desire somebody else's possessions, or bump into an old flame, the emotions of anxiety, envy, and love can appear and then disappear automatically. They're as fleeting and ephemeral as memory, and as equally dependent on the times. So just compare how we feel about the environment and gender roles today with how we felt about them only a few decades ago. We create emotions. The brain essentially invents them moment to moment to make sense of an ever-changing world. So the next big insight into the book is that memory isn't really about the past. Memory has always been fascinating for me. I wrote about it in my first book, where I focused on Alzheimer's after seeing my grandfather succumb to the disease. So memory's always captivated me from a young age right up to studying it in the lab. But research into memory and the evolution of memory is going through some radical transformations at the moment. So when we think about memory, many of us imagine a kind of library or a giant filing cabinet in which the files are past experiences ready to be accessed with the right cues. And this idea stretches all the way back to ancient Greece. Plato viewed memory as a wax tablet. Our memories and thoughts could be stamped, stored, and retrieved for later use. Socrates likened memories to birds in an aviary. Some in exclusive flocks, he said, and some in small groups, some flying alone here, there, and everywhere among the rest. But as modern neuroscience is showing us, that isn't what memory is or why it evolved. Memory is actually about the present and the future. So when we reflect on past experiences, we're not merely taking a trip down memory lane. We are also accessing an earlier brain state in order to influence our current behavior and predict the future. Because essentially that's what the brain is. It's an incredibly sophisticated prediction machine. So let's say you're hosting a dinner party for new neighbors and you make a joke about accountants. Now, they laugh politely, but you later discover during the course of the dinner that one of your guests is in fact an accountant and was offended by the joke. So if you're a good neighbor, the chances are you won't make a similar joke in the accountant's company. Again, not out of shame, but because you remember the negative consequences of your behavior. It's what many neuroscientists call the remembering self. It's how our brains plan for the future. And so the act of remembering something is actually a type of learning. It's a constructive process, allowing us to predict the future based on memories of the past. This is why we are such poor witnesses in court. Our future-orientated memory is actually better at imagining possible scenarios than remembering real ones. Now, the reason I believe that neuroscientists have historically misunderstood memory is actually due to the language that many scientists use to describe memory. So we often use terms like memory retrieval, memory acquisition, memory trace, memory consolidation, and so on. But the problem with this narrative is that it presupposes the idea of a memory, something that is separate from the person doing the remembering. So the language actually defines memory as separate from the mind instead of an integral part of it, when the truth is, and this is something that neuroscientists are flabbergasted by, but we're supposed to be. It's utterly bizarre, but that's just the way it is. The truth is your brain doesn't store or retrieve memories. It is memories. The brain is as much memory as skeleton is bone. And there's a wonderful quote that encapsulates this by one of my favorite authors, John Irving, who said, "You think you have memory, but it has you." So while I wrote this book, I also wanted to delve into some other topics that haven't been studied as much as they should have. And one of those topics is autism. And the reason I was interested in autism and the evolution of autism and the autistic brain was because I noticed there are some researchers now who are investigating exactly why autism is with us and why it evolved. And the really interesting fact is that autism may have played a crucial role in brain evolution. So the first thing to say about autism is that it's not a disorder, it's simply a different kind of mind, a neurodiverse mind. Now, we know that the autistic brain works differently to non-autistic brains and is often linked to enhanced intelligence, memory, and a strong attention to detail called systematizing. And for this reason, our autistic ancestors may have played a fundamental role in shaping early human societies, bringing new ways of seeing the world. So, for example, many people with autism possess a really deep understanding of natural systems, which would have enhanced our understanding of calendric systems and maps, critical innovations during times of environmental strife, such as the wintry conditions of the Ice Age. Also, people with autism often possess enhanced vision, taste, and smell. And many scientists believe that the incorporation of these skills into early human groups would have led to the creation of specialists, members who would have been indispensable for tracking, hunting, and the creation of new farming systems, all of which would have been essential to group survival. Art as well may have benefited from our autistic ancestors. So cave art, such as the paintings found in the Chauvet cave in southern France, demonstrate exceptional realism and a mystifying love of detail. Early humans most likely relied on depicting and memorizing their surroundings, and the autistic brain's ability to focus on parts rather than wholes would have made them the go-to choice of artist. And so the conclusion I came to in my in my research into the evolution of the autistic brain is that the inescapable fact is that autism is with us for a reason. And without autism, human communities would likely not be where they are today. So autism is not and never should be something to solve. It is it's actually one of the most beautiful spin-offs of human brain evolution. And so I thought I'd come to an end of my talk by discussing the next big insight, the final big insight of the book, which really is all about the future of human brain evolution. And the future of human brain evolution, it really isn't what you think. So our brains are still evolving, of course, but more importantly, the very nature of brain evolution is also changing. New technologies such as brain-computer interfaces, artificial intelligence, which is really having a moment at the moment, reprogrammable stem cells, and genetic tools such as CRISPR, which is a new technology that allows scientists to make precision edits to DNA, may actually forever change what it means to be human. So let's take brain-computer interfaces as one example. Many people are now using brain-computer interfaces. Only a few years ago, researchers at the University of California, Irvine, used this technology in a paraplegic man to restore his walking after a spinal cord injury. And other researchers have been using them to stimulate the visual cortex to treat the blind, restore lost connections in stroke victims, and even scan the brain for signs of depression. So treating the brain with machines has now has taken on a new label called electroceuticals, but it's currently helping hundreds of thousands of people with hearing loss, for instance, using cochlear implants, and thousands of people with Parkinson's disease and epilepsy using deep brain stimulation, also a form of brain-computer interface. And so it's no exaggeration really to say that this technology is allowing humans to shape their own evolution. And one of the first people to do exactly that is a man named Neil Harbison, the world's first officially recognized cyborg, a being that is part human, part machine. And so Harbison, who was born in Spain, he has this rare genetic condition called achromatopsia, or complete color blindness, which means that he essentially sees the world in shades of gray. So if you were to bump into Harbison today, one of the first things you would notice is a long black antenna protruding from his head, which actually translates wavelengths of light into musical notes. And this gives him extrasensory perception, and which means he can quite literally feel colors inside his head. And really, what this story and many others and many other advances in the future of brain evolution tell us is that the next step for our brains may not actually be the organic evolution that we've witnessed so far. The futurologist Ian Pearson imagines a future in which humans have merged with machines to effectively become a new species, which he, tongue-in-cheek, calls Homo cyberneticus. And it's really fascinating to see the new movement called Transhumanism and how that's taking root in our world, and this essentially aims to upgrade humans with gene enhancements, self-repairing brains, and tech implants to such an extent that we essentially become a different beings entirely, what some call post-human beings. But really the take-home message from the book and from my exploration of a 7 million year natural history into our brains is that nothing in our brains is fixed or permanent. In its endless cycles of change and in its susceptibility to nurture and in its power to shape our world, our brains offer us truly limitless possibilities. So I thought I'd finish my talk actually by just giving you a small reading from the introduction of my book. Our minds are changing. They have been changing for nearly 7 million years. What these changes were, how they affect us today, and where they may lead us in the future is the subject of this book. When we think of minds changing, we usually think of psychological changes that affect our moods and outlook, or neurological changes following a head injury or during an illness. But the changes I'm interested in run much deeper. They span the evolutionary history of our early human ancestors and shape every aspect of who we are: our emotions, our memories, our languages, our intelligence, and indeed the very fabric of our cultures and societies. It might not feel like it, but we are all heirs to millions of years of brain evolution, countless trial and error experiments in our mind's relationship with the natural world. As a result, we are cleverer and more interconnected than our forebears ever imagined. We all intuitively understand that the brain is the most important organ in the body. We use it to think, feel, decide, act, move, and control our breathing and heart rates. We could lose our limbs and other organs, yet think and feel as if nothing had happened. But if we so much as lost a piece of brain tissue the size of a grain of sand, our personality and behavior could alter dramatically. Like fingerprints, brains are unique in each individual. The brain is a dancer and a poet, a teacher and a human rights campaigner. The brain is how we construct reality or engage in fantasy. The brain defines us as humans and distinguishes us from other animals. It is also what we most desire to enhance with future technology. Barack Obama once declared the 21st century the golden age of brain science. I like to think of this book as the human tale that proves he was right. Think of it as a window into our brain's ancestral past, showing us the astonishing work that went into building such a unique brain and how and why we came to look through the glass darkly. There are amazing facts to be learned about the brain, facts that transcend our differences and change our behavior for the better. For most of human history, those facts were utterly alien to us. But now, thrillingly, we are finally learning where our brains come from, why they are so extraordinary, and how they are evolving today. And with that, I'd just like to say thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.